Welcome to Learning Unit number 11. Before we start on our path to review the requirements and the information on nutritional issues and global health, I want to take just a moment to thank everyone who completed the midterm, like kind of student satisfaction, I guess you would call it. And I do appreciate your feedback. And the feedback that was prominent was the need for clearer instructions. And I think this is sometimes common with the online courses, but I teach a lot online. So I do, number one, apologize that some of the directions, it seems as though for the opposing viewpoints paper and for the discussion board, aren't as clear as would be hoped for. So I will try to keep that in mind as I go forward. So I do want to thank you for that and let you know that I did read and I was open to that feedback. So I'm going to try to do a little better job on this course and in this specific learning unit. So for this learning unit, as we said, we're talking about nutritional issues in global health. And we have a wonderful resource, and that's chapter 9. It is a long chapter, so let me highlight some of the important things, but I do ask that you try to get through the beginning information. Once it gets into the case studies, that's up to you, but the beginning information really is good, vital info. So as we transition from women and children from women and children to the topic of nutrition, we begin by focusing on nutrition, especially malnutrition and anemia among women of reproductive age. So we are kind of combining both topics. And we know that nutrition is vital to child health and development and productivity and success along their full life course. So let's first step back and look at page 222 that defines in our text, that defines malnutrition. And there's going to be another source that you can look at for this. So when we say malnutrition, we're talking about those who do not get proper nutrition. Okay, that makes sense, right? Mal being bad nutrition. So they don't get proper nutrition, whether, and this is what's essential, too little, too much, or the wrong kind. So when we're talking about malnutrition, we're going to talk about undernourished, stunting, and being wasted, and wasted in a different term than I know has been used in the past around, in the U.S. So people who have low weight for their age are called underweight. People who are nourished to the point of being too heavy for their height are overweight or have obesity. So when we're talking about malnutrition, it is including undernutrition and over excess weight. So I do want you to keep that in mind. So page 223 then gives us a glossary of terms that are very helpful. So this is where you're going to see the stunting, underweight, wasting, anemia. It starts with anemia. So there you're going to be able to see the definitions of terms that we're going to use throughout this learning unit. So while significant progress has been made in addressing the burden of undernutrition globally, again, we're talking globally, over the past 2 decades, children and pregnant women in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia continue to experience the negative outcomes of undernutrition. So the most vulnerable population for hunger is children under 2 and pregnant women. So one of the facts that comes out in your text is in 2016, 155 million children were stunted and more than 50 million were wasted. I want to provide a little bit of update because, yes, that was 2016. UNICEF has information on child malnutrition updated in May 2023. And we have positive news because stunting has declined, but we need to progress further to reach the targets that have been set. And wasting persists at alarming rates, as well as obesity and being overweight. So this is UNICEF. I didn't add this on, but it shows in 2000 and then 2022, the wasting as far as the rates of wasting. So we're still talking about 7% of the world's population of children experience wasting. And over here, you're going to see stunting, and you're going to see that it was 33% in 2000. It is down to 22%, but how high that still is. That's 1 in 5 children across the world experience stunting. So here then is the same information for stunting as far as it was 204 million. Now it's down to 148. Our textbook gave a little bit higher. From 2016 was the data. So it has continued to go down. And 45 million for wasting. So these are, and again, this is UNICEF's website, and these are up-to-date sources of information. So let's go back. In addition, poor women and children often suffer from another thing that we're going to look at, and that's micronutrient deficiencies. And we're really going to focus on iron. But we know that vitamin A, iodine, folic acid, calcium, and zinc are all micronutrient deficiencies that significantly impact on developing children and pregnant women. So we're briefly looking at undernutrition as far as in obese and overweight adults. So we are going to still look at that. But let's move along. And again, chapter 9 is a little bit longer of a chapter, but really good information. So I'm hoping that you're going to get through the majority of it. This is Global Nutrition Report. And I'm just changing my page numbers here so that I can also highlight the page numbers that you're going to need. But Global Nutrition Report 2021, if we open that, we're going to see, and this is available to you, the definition again of malnutrition. So malnutrition is often split into 2 broad categories, and that's undernutrition and overweight, obesity, and diet-related non-communicable diseases. And remember the learning unit on NCDs. So this is how that is the Global Nutrition Report. This is the definitions that we're really focused on. So please make sure you recall that it's not just undernutrition, which does include stunting, wasting, being underweight, and micronutrient deficiencies. But also another broad category of malnutrition is overweight, obesity, and NCDs from diet-related NCDs. So you're going to look again, I offer you these definitions because if we don't understand what the definitions are, we're not going to be able to get any further. And stunting and wasting are essential that you take the time to review this as far as stunting being a form of growth failure and wasting being a different definition. So I want you to focus on that and micronutrient deficiencies. So let's get back because this is going to be available to you. You don't need to watch the video that's found within this report. You are going to be taking a quiz from chapter 9 in our text and the information found on the Global Nutrition Report. So probably the glossary of terms here. You're going to have 15 minutes to complete this quiz and 2 attempts. So I'm kind of making it a little different so that you have the 2 attempts. And here is a video on malnutrition and anemia. We have a lot of tools here in the US to assess for malnutrition and anemia. But what I loved about this video is that it's a training video for healthcare workers in countries that don't have the resources that we do, the tools that we have, and in those countries that have very high rates of poverty and where malnutrition and anemia are very common. It provides us with a glimpse into how malnourished children may present at clinics, especially in areas such as sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia. So we often don't see this. We see the overweight and obesity and the NCDs associated with that, but we don't often see the true wasting and stunting. But this is a global health course, so I want you to be aware of how those children often present. And they often present not to a nurse or a physician even, but a trained member of the community. So this is a neat video. The next thing that we're really looking at is anemia eradication. So we know that according to our authors on page 321, which was chapter 11, delaying marriage and taking prenatal micronutrient supplements would go a long ways in positively impacting on the health of the woman and newborn. But at the same time, we have children and women, of reproductive age that aren't getting especially iron fortified foods. And so this is a really neat way that they're doing it in cookies. So I want you to review that. Then there is a video on malnutrition in India. And malnutrition is a major cause of disease in India. And this is presented from India. And the video really includes good data on anemia, wasting, stunting of children and then women in India. When the gentleman who is speaking shares about the cost, I checked into it, and what he's talking about, because he's talking about in rupees, is that it is the equivalent in US dollars to over $1.25 billion. So what he's saying is there was extreme amount of money spent to decrease this issue, and yet you'll hear what the data is. And so the final discussion board number 11 is help us to understand how undernutrition and anemia in women of reproductive age can lead to low birth weight and IUGR. What's IUGR? IUGR is intrauterine growth retardation, and it's briefly discussed on page 231 of your text. So how low birth weight and intrauterine growth retardation or growth restriction in infants that are born to them, and possible stunting, wasting, anemia, and undernutrition of the child as the child grows. So help us to understand pull these all together. So if you have a woman of reproductive age who is undernourished and is pregnant, help us to understand how the state of her nutrition can really lead to low birth weight intrauterine growth restriction in the infants that are born to them. And then also possible stunting, wasting, anemia, and undernutrition of the child as they grow. So I really think the text, the video on malnutrition in India are going to be very helpful for better understanding these, or better answering this question. So there is information on page 229, more about iron as well. So I ask you to look at that. So I'm hoping I was a little bit clearer. I don't per se lecture um, in online courses. It is set up so that the goal is that you are provided with materials and you take the time to go through those materials. Obviously, I can't lecture for 2 hours on an online course, but I can be clear and I can assure that the directions are clear to you. So again, thank you for the feedback. I hope you have a good week, and I hope this is better meeting your needs.